Now, we're going to be doing a practical. In our practical example, we're going to be copying content from one file to another. Think about this like data migration, but just small amount of files. Just move it from one file to another file, and we're going to do all of that native within Python. I'm going to go over to my environment now. Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is day 11 of my 15 days of Python series. We started from day 1 through to day 5, day 10, and today is day 11. And guess what we'll be doing today? File handling. File handling is an important part of your Python programming because you'll be working with a lot of files when you try to work with Python. File handling is nothing but the ability to read, write, open files, and do a lot of manipulation with files. With all of the inbuilt systems within Python, you are able to automate processes, you are able to read config files, you're able to read reports, you're able to read different kinds of logging, data logging, do a lot of things within Python. And today I'm just going to go through the items we're going to be covering. We'll be understanding file handling, opening, reading, writing, and deleting files. And after that, we're going to go straight into using file methods such as read, write, seek, and tell. Oh, sounds sleek. And after that, finally, we'll be doing all we've been doing all through the course to apply these examples. We're going to get our hands dirty a little bit, and I'm going to give you something to crunch. And by the time we are done with all of the examples we'll be doing today. Now, introduction to file handling. File handling is a very essential part of any programming language. It doesn't have to do with Python. Think of any other programming language, SQL, JavaScript, any programming language, they do a lot with files. But the thing about Python is that Python provides built-in functions to create, read, write, and delete files. I will be looking at some of those within today's tutorial. Let's talk about opening a file. To open a file, use the open function. The open function returns a file object which has methods and attributes for performing operations on the file. So within that function, you are able to perform a lot of activities that has to do with the file. So it returns the file object, and within that file object, there's a method, an attribute that does different operations on that file. Look at the example that I have here. I have a file, I'm just giving a variable called file, and I'm calling the function open. The open has all of the method and attributes for performing all of the operations you need on that file. And this is a sample file. There's a sample, and you have the R. The R means read mode. It puts the file on the read mode, and you are able to print the file. What this brings out as an output is just the file name. It doesn't bring in the content of the file. And always remember to close when you open a file because it's very important. The next example I'm going to be showing you is the different modes that we have within Python. We have R, which is the read mode. That's obviously the default mode. And we have write. The write creates a new file or truncate an existing file. So if the file doesn't exist, it creates a new file. If there's an existing file with the same name, it truncates an existing file. And we have the append. What the append does, it adds to the end of the file, just like you're appending new item into a list. And we have create. The create mode, it creates a new file and fails if the file already exists. We have binary mode. We have the text mode, and we have the read and write mode. I'm just going to go a little bit into this. We're not going to cover everything, but I'm going to cover the very essential one that you're going to be needing as you work with your files. Reading from a file. Now let's go a bit more granular. The read mode reads the entire content of the file. Just have a look at the example I have here. I use with. I call the function open the text file as file. And after that, I say content. I do file.read. This read all of the content of the file, and if I need to print it, I could just print this out, and it prints out all of the content within that file. I have the read line. The read line, it reads one line at a time. Unlike the read that reads all of the content, this just looks at one line at a time. And what this will do here in this example that I have is that it's going to open as a file, and I could use the for loop to say for each line in my file, print all of the line and strip it. The strip is just to remove all of the white spaces, as I've explained previously. The next example, I'm going to be reading the file using readline. So in the first one, I was able to read the line individually one after the other by looping through it. With this, I'm able to read all of the content of the file that I have. And you can see the different applications of readline into this. And finally, I can use readlines. Readlines read all the lines into a list. It puts that into a list, and I could say open as file, lines, file.readlines, and for each line in the lines, I can read that and strip them of white spaces. This just gives an example of the fundamental way you could use each of those modes while trying to open your file in Python. We've talked about reading files. How about writing? We have the write mode. It writes a string to the file, and the write lines write a list of string to the file. Let's look at an example we have. I have one. I use the open. I open the file and use the ww is to write. As a file.write, I write hello world. This is a new line. I have explained before that if this does not exist, it's going to create a new one if it doesn't exist. To append, I could use the a append to an existing file already, and I'm just saying file.write. I want to append this into my file, which is example. And when I run this code, I'm going to be appending this particular line into the file that I have. Similarly, I could append multiple lines, and when I put the first line, I could write whatever I want here. I write the line, I use the new line character, and I put the second line, use the new line character, and put the third line. I could put as much lines. This is just to add multiple lines to my file. And the file I'm going to be writing this into is the example.txt file. And I'm able to do that as file, and I could write the multiple lines. These are like the basic ways you could use the write mode. You could do more complex things with that, and just feel free to explore as much as you want. But this is just to give you an idea of how you could do the read and how you could do the write using the native function from Python. I also have the file methods. You could change the file object position, and you could return the current position of the file. And this is just to be able to be flexible while working with file, even when you are not able to access the file. You could do a couple of things, try to kind of move the cursor a bit while not accessing the file on a raw basis. What do I mean by that? Using seek and tell methods. I put in my first line just to open the file, and I'm trying to read the file. And after that, I say file.read to read all of the content of the file. And I use seek. Seek, the position I want to go to, is resetting the file position to the beginning, the very first position. And when I print file.tell, what it does, it returns the current position of the file object. It tells me, where is this file, the current position of the file. And because when I did seek, I brought it to the origin, when I do tell me the position of the file now, it tells me that it's currently in 0.0. I want to read the first 5 characters of the file, and I go to read. I put in 5 just to read the first 5 characters. If what I have is hello world within my example.txt, what is going to be printed here? What is going to be printed here is going to be hello, just to print the first 5 characters. And if I come here to tell, okay, I've printed the first 5 characters, what is the position? And it tells me that the position is in the 5th position. So the tell tells you where your cursor is per time at the moment. And you could just use this method. It comes in handy when you are doing some more complex projects within Python. But just for you to know that you could play around using the seek and tell methods on your file and do a lot more. If you can create, you can also delete. How do we delete? We could delete using the OS module. You just import the module. It's native to Python anyways. So you just import the module, and you could just use the script if os.path.exist. It might not be compulsory, but because I want to ensure that the path exists, the path that I want to delete, and I could just use the .remove. .remove removes the file and print file delete. But if it doesn't exist, I need to tell my user that file does not exist. So it makes sense to use the conditional statement just to put it there. I look for the file, does it exist? If it doesn't exist, I could tell the user that the file does not exist. But you could actually use the remove to remove the file. Now we're going to be doing a practical. In our practical example, we're going to be copying content from one file to another. Think about this like data migration, but just small amount of files. Just move it from one file to another file, and we're going to do all of that native within Python. I'm going to go over to my environment now. If you come here, you'll see that I've created my directory, the 11. Please do that on your own environment. And I've also created my example Python file. And finally, I have a script that I have here. It's a movie script, and that is the file I'm going to migrate. You could use whatever you want, just write anything. You could either come here to create a new file and create a file, .txt, or you could actually go to the folder where you have this and just copy and paste the file. So here's my folder, 15 days of Python. I could double click on this and just copy and paste if you want. So you decide whichever works for you. I'm going to call this copying content from one file to another. Just to show you my text file, this is a transcript of the conversation from a movie called Suits. If you've not seen Suits, well, you might try it out. It's one of my favorite TV series. There's a conversation between Jessica and Lewis, where Lewis found out how much Harvey was paying Donna, and he was quite shocked. I just wrote this out, and you could use anything for your script just to do data migration on there. So now let's go. The first thing we're going to do is open. We're going to open our file, and for mine the name is moviescript.txt, and I'm gonna be reading it. I give it an alias as source file. This is my source file, and I'll be creating the destination one as well. Just defining the destination file. Just call this destination. Call this movie script destination. And what I'm going to be doing to this is to write, and I'm going to give it an alias as destination file. And when I'm done, what I want to do, I've just defined both the source and the destination. And let me say for line in source file, destination file, the right line. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is to say for each line in the source file, I want you to write it into the destination file. So write out each line one after the other. And when I'm done, I'm just going to see, just pay close attention to this place. You'll see that a new movie script destination file is going to pop up, and it means that it's been created. I have my movie script destination, and it's exactly what I have in my movie script. So I've done a little data migration. I've just copied from one file to another file. The second example we could do is to count the number of lines or words and characters in a file, which is very, very possible. And to do this, we're going to be writing a function to do that. It makes more sense to write a function so that we could also always repeat and reuse that function. Going over to my environment, I'm going to call this example 2. Just going to close that. I'm going to close this example 1. Okay. Call this counting lines, words, and character in a file. The first thing I'm going to do is to create the function, give the function a name that I'm going to be using, and the argument I want to return is the file path. So the user will provide the file path, and we're going to be using that to call the function. And after that, we're going to be opening the file, and what we'll be doing is to read as file. And for lines, I'm just going to be giving a variable, and what the variable is to read the lines. The read lines is going to read the line from my text into a list. And after that, I'm going to just put in all of the variables I want to return. Line count is going to be the length of the lines. Just to look at the length of each line is going to get the line count. For the word count, I'm going to just do a for loop. For the line, in each of these lines, I want to take out the individual words from it, and I'm going to be taking each word from that. And after that, I'm just going to be doing a sum of it. Character count as well, I'm now going to be going further to say for line in lines. I'm going to be taking a sum of the length of each one without putting it in a list. The difference between the word count and the character count is that here I separated each of the word, but here I'm not going to be doing a separation. I'm going to be doing an actual count of each of the character. And after that, I could just return this. I'd return the line count, return the word count, and return the character count. So afterwards, I could call the function, but before I call the function, I'm going to specify my file path. And after that, I could say lines, words, character. Each of these, I'm going to call the function, and it's going to be returned here. And when I'm done, I'm going to be using a formatted string to list the lines, the words, and the character. Let's see how this is going to go. Let's run this and see. I have 5 lines. I have the words 106 words, and the number of characters is 565. You could try this within your own text and see what you come up with. Now for your exercise, I would like you to write a Python script that reads a file and prints the longest line in the file. And it's kind of similar with what we've done before, trying to get the biggest number, the smallest number, and now we're just looking for the longest line. You could repeat the same text you've been using and just use my own as a reference point and use it as correction when you're done. And I'm going to be moving over to my environment. I'm going to call this exercise 1. This is going to be finding and printing the longest line in a file. I'm going to be defining a function to do that, and I'm going to call the function find longest line, giving it a name, and I'm going to be taking file path from the user, taking the file path, open the file, and I'm going to read it. The mode is read. I'll give it an alias as file. Then I give a variable called longest line. For now, it's just going to be empty because we're going to populate that. Sorry, I needed to use an underscore here. Okay. So what value do we give to longest line? How do we find the longest line? We're going to be looping through each of the lines in the file. So I'm going to say for line in file, if the length of the line is greater than the length of the longest line, of which from the initial time is just empty, is going to be obviously more than that. What should you do if it's higher than that? Then you say longest line is equal to line. Because it's looping through, it's going to go over it. If it's more than it, it's going to go. If it's not more than it, it's going to skip. If it finds any that is more than it, it's now going to assign the longest line to that. Afterwards, come here. Well, I want to return my longest line, and for that I also want to strip every white space. Okay, so I'm going to allow my user to impute the file path. I'm going to be using my movie script.txt, and I would print. I'm going to print find longest line, and this is where I call the function that I just created, and this is the file path that I'm going to be printing. I shouldn't have more than one here. I'm just going to delete this. Okay, so I call the function. This is the file path I'm going to be printing, looking through the movie script. Let's look for the longest line. Which is the longest line? The longest line is this. This is the difference between you and Harvey Lewis. You think winning is about taking something from someone else, but Harvey knows sometimes it's about letting things go. So winning is not about taking something from someone else. Sometimes it's about letting things go. And I know we've been winning all along, even as you subscribe to my channel and share with those that want to learn how to work with Python. 15 days of an incredible session with Python. And in the next video, we're going to be looking at a more interesting part of this. I'm going to be seeing you in my next video. Please try this on your own and apply this in a more complicated scenario. I'm going to see you. Catch you. Bye.